Alright, a few months back, Servida put out this video. It's a pretty good video detailing genres that are back on the rise. I decided to take that video as a challenge, maybe even as a threat. Simon, if you're watching this, I hope you're having a good day. Anyway, I decided to challenge myself to make a song for each genre he suggested, and I actually just finished releasing those about a week ago. So I'm gonna break all of those down right now. Alright, so the first genre that Simon said to look out for in 2025 was hood trap. I decided to make this. I named it Typewriter because it kind of sounds like when you go to a save point in Resident Evil 4, which, you know, the save points are typewriters. First of all, this is not sponsored. I just use a lot of cymatic samples because I paid for a whole bunch of them years ago, and I like to get my money's worth. So first we have this Cymatics 2020 Dark Melody Loop 1. This is what it sounds like without effects. I put a shaper box on it, and that just adds a little reverb, crushes up the sound a little, gives us these kind of stuttering effects, and then compresses the sound a little bit, and then some EQs just to kind of level out that high end. And here's what it sounds like with the effects. So definitely has more of that stuttering feeling to it. Alright, next is the bass. It's just 808 Well 2 from the Flex library Black Octopus Atlantis. Here's what it sounds like without effects. Alright, I think Soft Clipper was just to make the sound a bit louder. For Shaper Box, I add some noise to the high end, a little drive in the low end to just really emphasize, you know, the lower frequencies, and of course a little more compression. An EQ to cut out some of that high end. I probably cut just a little too much, but it's kind of what I went with. And then this patcher is just to sidechain the kick, and here's what it sounds like with the effects. Definitely a little crunchier and a little more present, I would say. Not quite where I would want it to be, but as close as I could get it at the time. Alright, next we have the Haunted Strings 1 from the Sonicus Obscura Flex Pack. The Shaper Box is just a little compression, and the EQ just tames some of the low end. So let's see what that sounds like, with and without. So first without. And here it is with the effects. You know, mostly just compressed, taming some of that low end from the sub frequencies. This is the fire kick. This is the peak snare. This is the baby snare. And this is the pacer hi-hat loop. And the drums mostly have EQ to make room for other sounds. You know, just tame harshness or muddiness. On the hi-hats, I do have Shaper Box 3 giving us a phaser effect every 8 bars. And that just kind of adds a little character to those hi-hats. So here's what it sounds like all together. This has been my usual mixing and mastering setup. You know, just add a little reverb, not too much. Obviously, we're cutting some of the lows and highs there. And it's very, very, very little reverb. Shaper Box, mostly for multi-band compression. Patcher is a mid-side EQ. We boost a little bit of the mids in the mid. We cut the sub-frequencies out of the side and kind of boost the highs. Ozone is a mastering plugin. Alright, like I said, this song is called Typewriter. Let's go ahead and move on to our next song. Alright, the next genre he said to look out for was Breakcore. Now, obviously, this was a little busier in a good way. I was feeling myself when I was making this one, so I'm just gonna go over everything real quick. Alright, obviously we have our volume automations at the top to really make certain sections pop. Here's our almond break. I used Slice X, and let's just look at some of these, alright? Because we have a lot of them. tend to jump between different versions of, these Slice X patterns based on the needs of the song. So the first thing I have is a shaper box to help us with rhythm and glitchiness. We have an EQ on there. The EQ is mostly for transitions, so it'll make it subtler, and then it'll get more in your face as we turn the EQ off. We've got another shaper box, which is just multi-band compression. We've got patcher for mid-side. Obviously, I did a lot to the mid and the side of this one. And then this vintage phaser is for those really glitchy moments. Just to let y'all get a taste of that. Kind of sounds like it's slingshotting off of something, and that obviously carries most of the song. It is breakcore, like almond break. Next we have this cymatic sample. I don't know what pack it's from, to be honest, but it's called Terra Firma. And here's what it sounds like without effects. Effects. Mostly for rhythm. I mean, you'll hear it. It's choppy. It's really choppy, really fast. This is the only different section, and it's mostly just chops. This section kind of serves as a build. It's mostly just some background elements in the drums, but I'm just going to play the background elements for now. And they were kind of just these tonal hits and then kind of a white noise up for... It's literally called Liftoff, you'll hear it. Next we have this bass. It's a Vital patch. It's the SNFK Future Bounce Dark Reese. Here's what that sounds like. And it looks like all I really have on it is an EQ, just kind of taming the high end a little bit. Next we have these staccato strings. I believe this is a flex. Yeah, just the essential strings, all strings staccato. They're just doing staccato things. And yeah, it kind of gives this adventurous feel as we build up to the next break and then the next drop. I'll play a snippet so you can hear what it sounds like all together. For the master bus, it's my usual setup. Alright, so that's my breakcore track called You Think So. Let's go ahead on to the next track. Alright, the third genre that Simon said to look out for was Botanica. So this one's really hard because I don't think I put a lot of rhythmic elements in it. I kind of just let the nature do its thing. It's very carried by some Vital patches and some cymatic samples. Let's just go down the line like we've been doing. Alright, so the first Vital patch we have is Fairy Pond. It's, I guess, by Lisa. This is what it sounds like. And that's just beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Let's go ahead on to the next one. Okay, this next one is called Artificial Nature. It's another pad made by Mr. Dorian. And that's just, man, the things people come up with, I swear. Alright, next we have these keys. They're a bit softer, I think, and it's called Rays of Sunlight by Moose. So here's what that sounds like. So you see it kind of has this bird noise background to it, but it's a lot softer overall. And of course our fourth Vital is Reese Modern, bass by Eric Bowman. It's pretty standard as a Reese bass, all things considered. And also for reference, the bass starts out very quiet, in each section, and towards the end of the section, it gets much louder. But here's what that bass sounds like. So next we have this cymatics sample that is Life, Walking on a Trail. Here's what that sounds like. It is a bit slowed down, so I had to control a lot about it. Mostly tried to keep it as mono as possible, I think. A little compression, a little drive, just to add some presence. A clipper just for a little further compression. And then take away a lot of the presence in the lower end. So it's mostly just a background element. The rest of the track is basically these various nature samples. I'll go ahead and play examples of those now. Of course, they're also routed to Portal, which is giving us kind of this wavy, rhythmic feeling. Here's the next one. This one's called Life, Forest 2. So lastly, we have Life, Backyard 2. And it has a bit of that Forest 2 element. Again, I don't know if that's a product of Portal or not. But it definitely makes the birds go kind of crazy, too. The outro is kind of just another section that incorporates all the previous synths, but removes all the nature samples. So here's just a snippet of what that sounds like. And that's insane, you know, I really enjoyed making this track as, you know, someone who normally heavily depends on the drums to carry a track. This was very different, and it, you know, it kind of brought me back to nature in a way. You know, like I feel myself wanting to go outside more, to not take, you know, the sounds of nature for granted, even in my own backyard. So let's go ahead and go over to the next track. All right, so the fourth genre that he told us to look out for was UK Garage. I don't know why he keeps saying UK Garage. It's UK Garage, right? Like I'm not trying to make fun of the guy. Like I genuinely don't know, because, you know, he's kind of a much bigger authority on music than I am. Is it UK Garage or UK Garage? Let me know in the comments below. But either way, let's get into it. All right, I felt like I went off on this one as well. I really like this track. It's called Real Good in Bed. And it's definitely got a lot to it. I promise it's not as busy. Like, this top half is just drums, you know, and we're going to go through those pretty quick, and then we'll go to the other elements in the song. First, we have the kick. Here's what that sounds like. And that's pretty much the whole premise. I mean, you know, we do have this short section where it's kind of a 4 on the floor thing. And that just kind of serves as a transition piece. All right, next we have the smoke snare. It's just a very basic snare pattern, like on the 2 and the 4. Next thing that comes in are these hi-hats, open hi-hats. And those are on the offbeat. And next we have some hi-hats that are specifically cutting into the open hi-hats so that they can kind of play off of each other. I'm going to play the closed hi-hats first, and then I'll play the open hi-hats with it after. You know, very basic rhythm, but here's what it sounds like with the open hi-hats. So pretty cool. And then we have these, I'm going to call them accent snares. This is the pike snare. Here's what it sounds like. And that serves to complement our main snare. And yeah, that's all our drums. Here's what it sounds like together. I think it sounds pretty good. You know, I'm not an expert on this genre whatsoever, but I think for a first try, that's pretty all right. All right, so next we have Guardian, which is a flex sample, but it's a very basic mid-bass kind of sample. Here's a listen. And that's followed up with the deep purple fingered, which is, you know, just a bass guitar flex sample. I think it probably is also side-chaining the Guardian one so that they don't overlap with each other. But here's what it sounds like. All right, and we don't really do a whole lot with the bass. Here's what it sounds like not distorted. Distorted. All right, next we have this House Vocoder Loop 3 from whatever Cymatics pack. And to me, it kind of sounds like they're saying real good in bed or feel good in bed. And that's kind of where I got the inspiration for the name. So here's what it sounds like. And obviously I have a whole lot of effects on it, so let's just hear it without effects real quick. Alright, so let's go over these. Alright, for Shaperbox, it gives us some rhythm elements, some compression, phaser, to just add character over time. The next Shaperbox adds a lot more rhythm elements, giving us this sidechain volume motion, as well as kind of a cutoff in the filter towards the end of what I could only assume is every quarter note. A spreader to make the sound wider. A limiter because it's just too powerful. And that takes away a little bit of the attack, but, you know, that's not a big deal to me. Cut some lows. This one's for changing things over time, because it starts out very muffled, and then it becomes this. Alright, so next we have Synplux Plectrum, which is another flex pack from the Mobile Synth Pluck pack. And here's what that sounds like. And I think that's all it does, and it only does that basically for this 16-bar intro. And I think over time it slowly just goes away. Yeah, we have some kind of a filter automation on that. So next we do another flex sample from the Olpaid compendium called Driving Through. And it also has kind of an EQ that opens up over time. We have an EQ to tame the high end, more high end taming, and a transient processor to just really make those plucks pluck, you know what I mean? Next is this acid bass, I believe is what it's called. It's called Stone Chimera. It's another flex one from Seamless R Monsters. Stone Chimera. And then over time, this automation just makes this Shaperbox come in and makes it more tame, more of a quarter note feel. You know, you hear how it's kind of thumping there. Next we have the Juno Brass. It's a flex, safe Samir synthwave sample. Here's how it sounds. It just has a spreader and an EQ to, you know, make it a little wider and, you know, tame some of the highs and lows like usual. Right, and now I'm going to play a short snippet of the full track, so here's what that sounds like. And yeah, I love this track. It's called Real Good in Bed. You can find it in the description or on the channel. Let's go ahead on to our last track. Alright, so this is the fifth genre that Simon said to look out for. It's called Private School Piano. It's a subgenre of Amapiano. I ended up just making an Amapiano track. So basically, I did a little research and I found that this music is basically if house music was just made with a lot of lo-fi elements or R&B elements. It's basically Afro house, if you will. So a lot of tracks that I listened to study to make this started with these shakers. So I found a good shaker loop. This is what it sounds like. Next, we have a kick come in with that 4 on the floor house feel. I decided to not go with a full snare because I really wanted to just get kind of a soft lounge feel. So I went with this rim shot. And that's kind of it for the drums. Here's what they sound like together. In hindsight, I feel like that reverb is a little strong. I wish I could have turned that down a little more. Next, let's get to our samples. So first, I'm just gonna go ahead and highlight this one. It's a very basic vocal sample that kind of just has this type feeling. I mean, you'll hear it. You know? It's basically stuff like that. It's just meant for the background. I also want to go ahead and get the bass out of the way. It's basically just a thumpy bass guitar sound. And it's mostly meant to just add a little rhythmic funk to the track. All right, so the rest of the track is just describing these keys, so let's go over them. I started with Electric Piano Bright. It's a flex sample from the Essential Pianos pack. Here's what it sounds like. And I did add in these very light, kind of strums, if you will. Strums. All right, next we have the jungle mallets, and this is what that sounds like. Lastly, we have the Safe Samir Synthwave, gosh, that's a mouthful, DX7 toy piano, and here's what that sounds like. And yeah, here's what the whole track sounds like here at that last section. Alright, so this has been my Amapiano track, Unwavering. You can find it on the channel or in the description. Obviously, Simon didn't ask me to do this. I just wanted to step out of my comfort zone and try something a little different. I did a fair amount of research, but of course, there's always still plenty more to learn. You can find his video as well as my 5 tracks in the description. I'm open to criticism in the comments. I don't know how often I'll be breaking down my own tracks in the future, but if you like what you saw or heard, leave a like, subscribe for more, and y'all have a damn good one.